Everything's in motion. This is one day at a time. Everyone has cancer, and this is where I battle mine. What's up, everyone? This is Cody, and welcome to Everyone Has Cancer. This is my show, presented by the Quarter Cows, because I'm a part of that. So, got to do a little bit of shameless plugging for my other stuff that's not so personal, just about all the greatest things in life: comic books, video games, movies, just anything with a cape on it. Hence the word cowl. But yeah, this is my show. I did last week's episode, and here I am doing mine. Last week's episode went up, and within a couple hours, I already had friends hitting me up. It got a good response. I mean, already got, I don't know, like 30 views on YouTube, which is kind of cool, especially since it's, just me, some guy in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, which is, probably not a place that you're aware of. And if you are, it's because you lived there and we probably went to high school together. So, hopefully we're going to pick up some steam, but you know what? That's not what it's about here. So, what this show is about is the fact that I've got friends that have already hit me up. You can hear that Oklahoma accent with already. So already have called me up or texted me, messaged me on Facebook through I got a page. There's a lot of good stuff to talk about. Let me finish what I'm saying here, though. I already have friends hitting me up saying, they'd like to talk about this too. They've had problems in their life, be it drug addiction or suicidal thoughts or just flat out depression and stuff that, I didn't think in a million years, a few years ago that I would have to deal with. But, here I am, and what the way I'm dealing with everything that I've faced in my life is by jumping in front of it right now. So, that's why I'm going to start every show with that intro, is everything's in motion. This is one day at a time, because it is, man. You got to take things one day at a time. You got to be patient with yourself. You can't handle tomorrow. You can't handle a week from now. You can't, let alone months from now. So when you get into survival mode, what survival mode means to me, another definition for survival mode is living one day at a time. And when we get to that point in our lives when we have this detrimental thing in our life that we have to overcome, then we can only take it one day at a time. And now I gotta say that I all the people that have contacted me, just thank you for, the support you're giving. But every single one of you have your own story, and someone out there needs to hear it. That's what this show is about. I'm not here for a conspiracy theory, so don't bother putting on the tinfoil hat just yet. Not for me, anyways, because all my stuff is 100% proven, and the evidence of it is the fact that everyone has their cancer. In 2001, I'm not saying everyone has cancer, but everyone has their cancer. Because in 2001, I was diagnosed with leukemia. I was 16 years old with ALL. And when I got diagnosed, I was able to get through it, but with the complete support of not only an entire school, but my family. And, everyone was pulling through for me. But as one of the people that contacted me said, and it just really resonated with me, is that we can have all the support and all the tools in the world. But ultimately, how did she say it exactly? Ultimately, it is up to us to decide if we're going to fight or not. So I got through it, and then again in 2005 after high school, I relapsed. I had cancer again, and this time it was more vicious, and the treatment was a little bit more vicious. And we will get to that in a sec. Well, not in a sec, but we'll grit, as we say in Oklahoma, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. That's probably not just an Oklahoma saying. Just really showing my intelligence right now. but yeah, like the idea is that I've had, because of that part of my life, that doesn't define me. It's not a sign over my head, but it is something that as far as I'm concerned, as far as becoming a born again Christian, the real baptism, the real time that I was born was, well, that sounds a little silly, but in a hospital room. But it was in 2001, after the age of 16, when I was diagnosed with cancer. Because up until then, I was just floating through life, man. I was just living from kind of one laugh to the next. And that's, it's a good way to live. But after that, I've had so many people over the years come up to me, especially friends that I went to high school with, or, we're all up in our 30s and married, in the military, just whatever, that would come up to me and say, man, you got through that. I don't know how you got through that. You are so strong. You are so courageous, but the one thing that would always get me is some people would start, especially close friends, would start talking about whatever they're going through in life, down from a stressful situation at work, down to, having a throat cold, or, I got a buddy that's asthmatic, but not to the point where he needs a inhaler, but to the point that every single August he is going to get bronchitis. That he's got it down to a pattern, that he has it set up with a doctor that he has to take. He knows when he's going to get bronchitis, and that's when he gets it, and he's been that way his entire life. But even him, he came to me and said, well, and told me all the things he was going through, and always with the asterisk of, well, it's nothing compared to what you went through, but it was still pretty bad. And that always bugged me. That always... I hated that, because it was like they were demeaning whatever they were going through. Now, there's a big difference between cancer and bronchitis, yes, but the whole point of everyone has cancer is everyone, in my heart of hearts, I know that everyone has that thing in their life. Maybe it may be one thing, but it may be a series of things, but I think it really traces back to just one moment in their life that is created them, that they had to go through. And when I say created them, I mean quite the opposite. It destroyed them. They got to the point of damn near dead. And some people went a little bit further, and that's where they're at now, is that some people, where I had cancer, let me explain. So where I had cancer, maybe you had physical abuse. Where I had cancer, maybe you have drug abuse. Where I had cancer, maybe you have a father that you could never live up to. Where I had cancer, maybe you had a domestic problem. Maybe you were adopted. Maybe you can't get over drugs, and or maybe you're an addict. Maybe you're relapsing over and over. I am not here to tell you how to get through it. This show is not about, well, do this, do this, do this, because I cannot. There is no license in the world that can teach me how to drive you from the helm of your heart, and only you can do that. You're the only one that can do it. But what the show is about is to show you that wherever you're in it, in the thick of it, there is an outside of it. I always hated when my number one hated thing that I always heard was, it's going to be better tomorrow, but it's not going to be that good today. It hurts today, but it'll be better tomorrow. Just one of those things. I despise hearing that. That's why I say it in a goofy voice like that, like a Barney One Bullet voice, really showing my age. But because I don't, because we don't want to wait for the future, because there is no future, there is no past, and I said that to my brother the other night, and he told, and he kind of blew my mind and said that the future is just something we're working towards, and the present is the here and now of what we've got, and the past does not exist. Okay? I'll go a step further and say that here's the thing is, maybe you lost a loved one, maybe you are suicidal, maybe you can't stop from hurting yourself somehow, or maybe you were just diagnosed with something just like I was, and you just cannot get through it. Well, I'm here to tell you that no matter what you are going through, there is a worse, and no matter what you are going through, there is a better. And you will always be able to find someone who is on the other side of it. And I remember, because of my age at 16, it was 2001, there wasn't a big system of cancer patients, especially with my form of cancer at my age, because, there's only really the two most, well, I don't want to say there's only really two forms, but the most common forms, I was told, was leukemia is kids get it, and elderly people get it. It's not very common in teenage years, pre-adolescent years. But obviously it does happen. And I think we're talking like fractions of numbers to say what's common and what's not. But really, there is no common. And, one of my favorite quotes from the movie Tombstone is, there is no normal life, there's just life. But yeah, I always wanted someone there, not to tell me how to fix it, not to tell me what I need to do. I was in the hospital. I had doctors checking on me. I knew all I needed to do. What I really wanted in my heart of hearts was someone maybe 20 years old, just a little bit older than me, that had the same cancer at the same time, the same age range rather, that I had it. And I wanted to see them strong and on the other side of it. And I'll be honest, I never got that. At the time, many years later, when it was all behind me, then I got it. Because then I started finding people. I had a buddy that I worked with for a long while that I worked at one store. I'd rather not say where. But, if you know me, then more than likely you already know. But just because I'm not that bright as far as, like, all that stuff. Anyways, but yeah, I worked with a kid that was just maybe a few years younger than me. Turned out he went through the same hospital. He had Dr. K, he had Dr. Hum, and he went through the exact same procedure, but he had AML, and which is basically, because he thought he was cooler than me, he had to get the more intense version of cancer. And that's one thing you're going to be left with stuff like this, guys, is you'll find that cancer patients have a good sense of humor for cancer patients, but not really it's usually a dark sense of humor when it comes to stuff like that. But I've got a good sense of humor about it now. My buddy, my best friend in the world, PJ, he, I remember one time I was coughing, and he was in the middle of a long rant or a long story, because that's all him and I do. And I coughed. It interrupted him. And he just said, "Oh, okay, Cody, we get it. You had cancer." I thought it was hilarious. You may see that as messed up. But, oh my God. But, when you go through this stuff, you end up the best version of yourself. You end up being able to look at it from the other side. And the person that you are is not going to be the same person you are at the end of it. And I don't mean you're going to be ravaged, beaten, and broken, but you're going to be beaten down, but you will be victorious. Because, and the only way, you got to listen to me here, is the only way to be victorious is if you help someone with the tools. All you have to do is tell your story. The only way for, and this is going to get real cheesy, but the only way for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing. I used to, when I was a kid, I thought that only pertained to like Superman, Batman, good men have to stop evil. And, now I've kind of come to the revelation that the only way for evil to triumph in our hearts is if we remain silent about what we've been through. And you don't have to sit there and be fake, and I don't mean that in a bad way. There's some great speakers out there that talk about, no, I decided to be courageous. I decided to be strong. No one, when you're going through the stuff that we have all of us have been through, that is completely unique to us, our own form of cancer, none of us went through it saying, you know what, I'm strong, I'm tough, and I'm going to overcome this. If my name ain't, whatever your name is. And I'll tell you what I did, man. I've been told I'm strong. I've been told I, have this iron will, and then I have this fight and this fire in me. I laid in a bed for a few months, throwing up and crying. That's how I see it. But when someone else looks at it, they see inspiration. They see strength. They see something that gives them hope. So even if you don't think you have been through the ringer, and even if you don't think you're great at, telling a story or spinning a yarn, you don't need to be great at telling a story. You need to just tell your story. Be real, be genuine. We have an infinite number of movies, books, and stories that can kind of give us inspiration as far as good triumphing over evil, or evil winning the day because, it's a horror movie. But what we need more right now in this world is hope. And the only way you get hope isn't from someone standing there and being an icon. What we need is reality, in my opinion. We need strength only comes from looking at someone and saying, hey, look, I went through it too. Realness. My brother, he went through a divorce, man, and I remember sitting there with him and his best friend the day that it was, again, don't really want to throw anybody under the bus here, and that's, not what the show's about. So, but on the day that it was pretty obvious that we were having a divorce, my brother called me and asked me to come over right then and there. I came over, and his best friend was there. I was there, and we started talking. And he thought had no idea what to do because it was a divorce. And there are actually some people out there that would look at him and say, oh, which one? Is this your third or fourth? Or they'd say, oh, this is your first one? Yeah, the first one's always the worst. And that's not because everyone gets divorced. That's because there are people on the other side of it that have experienced it at a higher level and a higher extreme rather than you have, and have come out the other side, that have these tools about it. One person I talked to recently after I posting this last episode, or the very first episode, was telling me what we talked about suicide, and I'm going to have them on the show hopefully very, very soon. Once I figure out what the show's going to become, because I'll be honest with you guys, I'm kind of sitting in a corner in my room, just wherever I can fit this teeny tiny desk that I can't even sit like forefront at because it's kind of shoved in the corner. And when we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But she was talking about suicide. She was talking about not talking about committing it, but talking about having suicidal thoughts. And she has a whole set of tools in front of her that she just knows that she's got an issue with this, and these are the steps she's taking to make sure nothing happens. And some people, I was telling her, and we just both came to the realization, some people don't have that, and that's why they go forward with it. That's why they step out and decide that they want to go forward with the horrible act of suicide. But if they would have just seen someone that lives with this every day and has gathered the tools, and you can read books, you can go to a therapist. And I'm not saying don't take medication, because some people, we all need medication. I'm sitting here, I take antidepressants, I take anti-anxiety, and we'll get to that. But yeah, that's stuff that we need in our lives. But if we start depending on it, there's nothing that can stop the thoughts that come into our head. Like there's no pill in the world that can stop one sentence from entering your mind. A very specific sentence, a very specific question that you ask yourself. But some people out there, like the girl, I was trying to keep it unisex as far as description, but the girl I was talking to, my buddy from high school, was she has been through this, she has worked on it, and she's still going through it. But she has developed into the person she is now. She's developed into the best version of herself. The reason I call it the best version of yourself is because you have everything you need to turn around and not look at the past in regret, but look behind you and see who is going into it right then and there and think, all I wanted in the world was someone to know that I was going through this, that I feel completely alone. And that there's excuse me, and that there's another side to it. Because there is. And the only way to find that is by telling someone your story that may be going through something similar and just need someone to say, hey, I'm on the other side of this. Not there's hope. Hey, you need to pray this. You need to take this. You need to just say, hey, look at me. Would you ever have guessed it that at your age I was doing the same thing? I faced similar issues, be it drug abuse, physical abuse, thoughts of hurting ourselves, if we have a loved one that passed away. When we faced our cancer, we didn't decide to stay strong. We were weak, but we somehow pulled through it. Here's my notes. Here's how we're going to deal with it. And that right there, guys, is what the show's all about. I just spent 22 minutes telling you again what the show's all about. But, like I said, man, it's something near and dear and close to my heart, is sending out my story and saying, hey, if I hope you uncover this, and I hope it gives you some kind of light at the end of the tunnel. I hope this reaches someone, because it's not about getting popular or getting famous off my story. What the true message here is, tell your story, know that you're not alone, and remember to stay strong. So let's go ahead and top this show off and say I want to thank the Court of Cows. Yeah, I know the Court of Cows is a show that I'm also a part of. Well, more of a branding that I'm a part of. That we're on YouTube at facebook.com/Court of Cows. I don't think we have like a very clean YouTube name. It's like or youtube.com/court/of/cows.b2963. You sunk my battleship, But what it is we talk about comic books, we talk about movies, we do a lot of unboxings. Recently, when Destiny 2 came out, we did an unboxing of the big collector's edition. Chris and Mike did that, and it was awesome, and it was hilarious, and it was very, very super, super cool. But yeah, I'm a part of that. I actually have my own show that there's only one episode up with me in August. It's called Codebreaker. We got the Mighty Mike Drop, Beyond the Mat, the Chris Chronicle, and and I feel bad because August has a show too, and it completely escapes me what the name of that dadgum show is, and I will have to look it up. But Oculus Rift, or I don't know, it was something like that. Anyway, but yeah, we all have shows on there. We have a podcast called The Court of Cows. You can find our YouTube through our Facebook. I think we have a Twitter and an Instagram as well. There's a lot of good stuff happening in comic books. Batman Metal is going nuts, and it is looking really, really cool. All these individual stories of like just real, for lack of better words, metal Batman stories. And Rebirth, oh my gosh. If you guys haven't checked out any of Rebirth, you need to. DC Rebirth, pick up anything, and you will be blown away. I hear Red Hood is especially awesome. Batman Beyond has blown me away. Teen Titans has been great. Titans has been great. Batman, oh man, all of them have been awesome. But yeah, so check that out. Also, you've heard my resolve. You've heard what this show is about, but you need to understand that it's not always going to be a happy story. It's sometimes it's going to get a little gross, and but if you bear with me, you may find something there that is something. I'm not saying that you need to hear. I'm just saying something that might strike a chord with you. And also, did you hear that awesome theme song I got? That song was recorded many, many years ago by a band called Critical Nonsense, again, which I was a part of. But yeah, you don't have to, it's just the instrumental. So it's a song called Who I Am that they had written, and I was lucky enough to write lyrics for it. And I don't think those vocals ever made the light of day. Like, I don't think I even have them. I'm surprised I still even have this song. But that song just really means a lot to me. So I actually listen to that song quite a bit and try to like come up with new lyrics for it. Because, I've been in the local scene for a long time too. I live behind a microphone. Well, I'd like to make a living behind a microphone, and I'd like to do something that the moniker that I heard from Kevin Smith many years ago, which was, if you do what you love, then what was it? To be successful, do something. If you can figure out, what was it? If you can get paid to do something that you would do for free, then you've made it. It's something. I'm paraphrasing. But yeah, so where did we leave off last time? The last time we left off is, it took us right up to being diagnosed. So let's go ahead, and at this point in my story, we're going to go ahead and kick this thing off proper, and we're going to dive back into it. Previously, what we talked about was that I got a wicked nosebleed, my shoulders were hurting, and and my back was in terrible pain, and went to the hospital as anemic, but ended up being there for what was supposed to be a day, turned into 2 weeks, turned into one fateful night, being a revelation that something was awfully wrong with me. And the next day finding out that I officially had leukemia. I had that thing that at the time in my life, all I had ever knew what it was the big C. It was something that I'd never have to deal with. It was the boogeyman. It was an evil that some people have, but you never really come in contact with, that good kids can avoid it, but it happens to bad kids. That's how I saw it. Cancer was that thing that the bald kids were on TV with the 800 numbers talking about having, and all this stuff. Like it didn't affect me, so it didn't really. It was a commercial, as horrible as that sounds, but I mean that's the honest to God truth. Is I didn't know, and no one knows about these horrible things in life until they're touched by it. But at the same time, you don't know Amazing Grace until after you face the horrible things in your life. That's just the way it is, you know. Some lights only burn bright when you're in the dark. You know, what can I say? But yeah, so let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to throw 30 minutes on the clock, which works because I've already been yammering and rambling on. I'm a rambling man, what can I say? That's kind of my biggest issue, is that I tend to ramble a lot, and yeah, I'm doing it right now. I'm not stalling for another 5 seconds or anything, just to make it an even 30 minutes. But let's go ahead and start the clock at 30 minutes. So here we go. So I'm at the hospital. I get told I have to get a bone marrow biopsy, and they need to look at my bone marrow. They take me into this room, they knock me out, and when I wake up, I got my mother and father there with 2 doctors. One is Dr. K and one is Dr. Hum. And at good old St. Francis, who me and my mother would come to know it as the Pink Plaza Hotel. And, you know, we called it that for obvious reasons, and, you know, we'll get to that. If you know the place, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. But yeah, I wake up to a look on my parents' face that I can't even describe. I can only describe it as if someone at an open casket could look from inside the casket, these are the faces they'd see. I have no other way to describe it. But obviously something's amiss. Something's wrong. And they start explaining to me that they have looked at my blood, and that, you know, just think of like a red blood cell stream. Like, I mean, it looks a certain way with just the big old discs of red blood cells flying through red. The doctors told me that mine looked like debris. There wasn't a single red blood cell, like a intact red blood cell, that wasn't cancerous. And they don't know how long this has been going on. But I could tell them it's been going on for a while. Another thing, you know, I had talked about my shoulder hurting. This was also my legs hurting. When I was a little kid, I had, what is it? Restless leg syndrome. And, you know, I found out as a kid that, you know, if you laid upside down and got your legs elevated, then it made it go away. You know, but that was the weird thing, is a lot of nights I couldn't get it to go away, and this is going from, I had a twin mattress on a big frame, and I thought that the being up off the ground, like when I'd wake up, when I'd finally get to a point where I could fall asleep on one shoulder or the next, is I would lean down, put both feet on the ground, and it was like I stood on a tack. Like my leg would just shoot electricity up my leg, and it would just hurt so bad. So I thought it was just, you know, I had this idea that I had just really, really horrendous restless leg syndrome. Because that's the thing, is, you know, when there's something really, really wrong, some people are hypochondriacs and think that it's one thing or another, which, you know, I'll be honest, is now you know, anytime I have a pain, I get a little concerned about it. But some people, at the time, I was the kind of person that, like, you could cut off my arm, and I would look at it and be like, well, you know, a couple Band-Aids and some Robitussin, I'll be all right. But also at the same time, you know, like I said, I figured out you could lay upside down for a while. There was a couple times where if I went into the living room and got into the big recliner, the dad chair, as some people would call it, and just laid in it upside down, I could actually get comfortable enough to have my legs elevated, and I could fall asleep like that. And I actually started sleeping like that. Like after a while, I would go up to my room when I could, because that's where all my stuff was. That's where, you know, my CD player was and all that, and all of my video games, and my more wood than TV. But when it came time to go to bed, I was upside down in the recliner. And I would sleep there, and sometimes I would be able to get up and, tired enough to go to my bed, but, I'd never stay there long. And at this point, my bed was just a mattress on the floor because, like I said, I couldn't put my feet down, but I could, if I kind of crawled out of bed, and the room was pretty long, like it had a pretty good sized room. And, I kind of never went without, like I always had a big bedroom growing up. And, but yeah, I'd be able to like crawl over to the couch and just sit there until, my legs stopped hurting, until my back started hurting horribly. Like I brought it up at the party and all that stuff. But yeah, then there was just that one night where I sat up and the electricity went shooting down my spine at the base, middle, and top of my back. What they tell me in this conversation, back to this conversation, my mom and dad are sitting there talking to me and telling me that these doctors have found leukemia. And a lot of the times what's pretty common is that it's a blood cancer, so best way I can describe it, it sets up an HQ somewhere in your body. It picks a spot in your body to sit and fester and grow, kind of like a beehive or a wasp's nest. And then it goes out, and all the wasps, which are cancer cells, attack the white blood cells and turn them cancerous. Kind of like Ultron. How he can just touch a robot and it become him. It's basically that is your heart sends out the white blood cells, what's it supposed to do, but they get turned cancerous. They get turned rogue and detrimental and not working properly. And so the heart sends out more white blood cells. So the cancer takes over more and more and more. But it always has a space in your body. My space, the space that it set up housing and everything in my body was my back. So that electricity that shot up my spine is when I sat up, that was all she wrote for my spine. And a disc at the base of my spine, in the middle of my spine, and close to around the base of between my shoulder blades somewhere. I don't remember the exact numbers, but they showed me the x-ray and everything, because we had to do that too. They had fractured, just a perfect crack through 3 discs. Your entire spinal cord is important, but 3 of the biggest high pressure points in your spine. And they looked at my bone marrow because that was telltale signs of cancer. And ding, 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 they found it. My mom has described it. Maybe I'll have her on the show at some point just to kind of tell, because she actually listened to it. Everyone I know has listened to the show. I've been trying to do podcasts and YouTube shows forever. This is the first one that I've actually gotten like a really good response from, especially family members that have. My mom, when she listened to it last week, she said that, man, I could really fill in some blanks there. But yeah, at some point I may have her on just to tell a perspective, because let me tell you guys, and you all need to know this, is that when you have cancer, when you get cancer, when you have something similar to cancer, domestic abuse, drug abuse, sexual abuse, any kind of thing like that, the entire family has it with you. And I don't mean they may not always support you. Some people may double back. I know my father did. And that's a story for another time, and we'll get there. But some people everyone needs to understand that you never have cancer alone. Cancer is a really big stone dropped in a pool that you are the center of. It goes out in waves, big waves, and some people turns into tidal waves. Some people on the outside, it hurts and hits. I actually meant to say hit, so that's kind of a Freudian slip, but it hits more people harder than others. Um, but my mom described it as as a cloud in her mind. Like there's no other thing to describe that feeling. It's some people don't, and I guess in a weird, sick way, I was fortunate enough to have a name for it. Some people go their entire lives without knowing what their cancer is. And okay, I know I keep going off on different points, but that's another reason you guys need to tell your story. Because you need to hear it. You need to hear yourself say it. Because if you hear yourself say it, it becomes real. That's the craziest thing to me. It becomes real. The inner monologue that you have, what you are having right now as you are listening to this, no matter what you're doing, and no matter what reason you're listening to this for, you have an inner monologue right now. Please trust me. That inner monologue is not you. Okay? That inner monologue is not you. I can't hear what's going on in your head. You can't hear what's going on in mine. But I can tell you that when you speak, it is from your heart. It is from your soul. You cannot stop it. If you get off on a rant, a fire lights under you. Because thoughts, they can pervert emotions and they can inspire emotions, but you don't feel an emotion until you start talking. Just look at, you can be mad at someone, but you don't get furious until you start talking about it, until you confront that person. If you have the strength to confront them. That is why we talk crap about other people. That is why we get angry when we get passionate. We get ourselves hot, as my buddy Britton used to say. You get hot, But the fire is in your soul. The fire is in your gut. It's in your heart. What's going on in your head, especially right now, is not you. The real you needs to hear your voice. Okay? You need to hear your voice. You need to hear how you really feel about it. Not your rationale. Not the way you think about it. You need to hear how you really feel about it. Because when you start talking, even if you're the only freaking person in the room, you are going to find out something about yourself, and you are going to blow yourself away. You are going to say something that lights a fire. Listen to my voice right now. You hear this passion? You hear where I'm going with this? I'm getting energetic. I'm getting fired up. I'm not getting angry, but I'm getting fired up. Because if I just sat in my head, then none of this gets out. No one can tell your story but you, okay? Everyone is going to talk about how they related to your story. Everyone is going to talk about how courageous and strong I am to my face because they saw the little things. But what they didn't see is the coldness of an x-ray bed, the sincerity of a doctor that came into work to a place that now I've taken up residence. They can tell me how strong I am, but they'll never understand that I need white noise to go to sleep because I'm used to hearing an IV pull motor. So there's some stuff you can't teach. It's like on Good Will Hunting. You can't, you ask about war. You could probably quote me some Shakespeare. Once more into the breach, dear friends, but you've never been close to one. You got to understand what it's like, what it was like for you, and the only way you're going to realize what it was like for you is if you tell it, and someone else needs to hear that. Anyways, let's get back on track here. So yeah, the black cloud in your head. There's no other thought in the world. When you hear about it, one of the best descriptions and one of the best things I've ever seen that was like the most definitive moment of being told you have cancer is there was this movie with what's his name, Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Seth Rogen. The name of the movie escapes me, but it's where Joseph Gordon-Levitt gets diagnosed with cancer and Seth Rogen's his best friend. That was a pretty true to form movie. I mean, aside from like the sex and stuff like that, because yeah, that never really happened to me. I never really played the pity card, but because when you're going through stuff like that, you don't really want to play the pity card. But he gets told he has cancer, and you just hear this feedback noise, and the doctor's voice fades out, and then it fades back in. When he asks the question, it blurs. And I just remember thinking the day before my back broke, that, hey, gets me out of school. I don't have to go to school now. Right on. But didn't know I was in for the biggest fight of my life. Quite literally. But, then later that day, they bring this big, ridiculous back brace in. I mean, it's just metal and screw, just this giant freaking contraption. And they put it on me. I can't, and it's basically like a neck brace for your back, so I can't lay down comfortably. I can't sit up comfortably. So I'll be honest, I never wore that thing. I just laid there. And, but because of that, I ended up in pain because, again, fractured discs in your spine. That's not just a one-night thing. You're in pain. So I find out later that doctor that pulled me over and shot me in the hip shot me with Demerol. And so they give me a steady dose of Demerol. And I mean a steady dose. Like I start, I just always have an IV drip of it. And I have this little button, which, I'm sure you've heard tales of it. This thing, I was in so much pain, and this thing was on a 15-minute loop. So I had this button in my hand, looked like a little detonator, and I would watch the clock. And the doom clock, the one everyone hates from school, the big round face clock, where George Carlin says, like, the first half always goes down quick, but, it's the second half that's fighting gravity. That's all in a hospital bed. So I'm sitting there watching it. Every 15 minutes, I'm hitting that button. And then I'm counting from 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, waiting for another 15 minutes to go by. Click. Right at 14 minutes and 45 seconds, there is nothing more attentive than me and the second hand. Click. Click, click. Watching movies all day. This is pre-laptop, so I got this wonderful woman that's I'm setting up in pediatric wing, and I got this wonderful lady coming in just every now and then, just saying, hey, do you need anything? They got video games, and they got this. You want to play a video game? They wheel in this big TV, and with the big box underneath it with a clear face with a circle, so you can like reach in there, but you can't take anything. Kind of like if you go to the bank and or to the movies and they ask for your ticket and you can, or your ID, and you kind of have to like slide it in there. It's like that, but you got to get your hand in there so you can switch cartridges. Again, pre Xbox 360, way before Xbox One. So I had an N64, an NES, and just whatever games they had. And the funny thing is I've actually become a collector in my later years of old school retro games. And and that's the thing I know about, where some people know cars. You show me a video game, I'll tell you how much you could get for it and how rare it is. And one thing that always kind of stands out is that hospital had a lot of rare games. The Super Nintendo had like Secret of Evermore, which isn't really that bad, but I mean they also had like Earthbound and like Run Saber and Hagani. I mean, come on. Look, if you don't know what Hagani is, look up the price right now. It's and the NES, I remember, had Metroid, which if you've ever played Metroid, I put in a lot of time at that hospital, so I sat there and beat Metroid. I got so, later, and we'll get to this, but I got so accustomed that I started just bringing my own games. And, they would just bring in a TV. Oh, here comes Cody. Send in the video games. And that's one more reason we called it the Pink Plaza Hotel. Because, I would go in there and be like, okay, I think I will take the N64 with a side of Super Nintendo. And they would wheel in the N64. Or they'd say, well, some kids, he's got the N64. And I'd be like, right on. Well, you know what? Just send me a TV. I'll have my mom bring up one. This is around August, September. I'm spending having to spend a lot of time in the hospital, obviously, and got this steady drip of Demerol going, and that doesn't mean it's time to just sit there, do my time, and get out. Oh no, we get a little bit crazier. One night, I find it just very, very hard to breathe. Just all of a sudden, I cannot breathe. And all these doctors come rushing. I mean, just a medical team. It's like the freaking, if all the Power Rangers wore white coats, they just come flying in the door. And they start hooking me up to this, they wheel in this big machine and start hooking me up. And I'm like, what's going on? And it turned out my heart was in labor. And I was having a heart attack. And the reason I was having a heart attack is because at this point I'm doing blood transfusions. And the blood was of normal consistency, thickness and everything. But my heart had been pumping such cancerous, weak blood for so long that my heart is a muscle. Your heart's a muscle. And it became so weak that when it started pumping it got so accustomed to weakness. You see what I'm saying? You tell your story, you find out things about yourself. I'm doing it right now. But it got so accustomed to weakness that when I started pumping regular blood, it went into labor because it was not strong enough for normalcy. It wasn't strong enough for the regular average Joe consistency of blood. And my heart was going into labor, and there was a chance that it might stop. So they had to put me on a heart monitor. I'm sorry, I completely skipped this. They put in this thing in my chest called a portacath. I'm sure a lot of people know what that is, also known as just a port. What that is, it looks like a little snare drum. And, they don't want to poke your veins because you are going to get poked a lot with different IVs. You have to get your blood drawn regularly. You have to get tested every single day for different illnesses that might arise. You got to get pumped full of antibiotics, Benadryl. Oh man, you had to get pumped full of all sorts of stuff. So they didn't want to leave you with track marks, So what they do is they put this little drum in your chest with a string on it, a straw rather, and this straw is connected to an artery in your heart. So whatever medicine you get goes directly to your heart and then flows out to the rest of your body. And oh my gosh, you haven't had Benadryl till you've had it through a portacath. We're talking. You take it, you're out. I mean, instantly. But yeah, so I already have this drum in my body with the little butterfly needle. Look that up as well. Where they just poke it in there and just a big old steri strip over it. And, but then my heart goes into labor. So they send me this big machine, hook me all up, but this little IV thing, or this little blood pressure thing on I think it was on my finger, but I was so messed up on Demerol that I just kept taking stuff off so I could sleep. And so they ended up just strapping it onto my toe. That way I couldn't take it off. They were worried about me running out of oxygen because, my heart was going into labor. So I had this big oxygen thing over my nose and over my ears. I don't know what that's called, but I had that. I vaguely remember having this because you got to understand that through all this, at this point, I'm pretty messed up on Demerol that everything becomes a blur. And, so it's almost like being in a coma. I'm just kind of in and out. At one point they came rushing in because of the amount of medication they were giving me and, the healthiness of my liver. Cause obviously everything goes through your liver, man. So, any kind of medication you take, anything that goes in your mouth and gets swallowed goes through the freaking liver. I don't know if that's medically accurate, but basically my liver started shutting down. So we had to hook me up to another machine. Then my kidneys couldn't process the chemotherapy. Everything was so weak from pushing weak blood. So now my I don't want to say which one it was because I don't know. But one of my kidneys started shutting down. I mean, it just kind of went from one thing to another to another. And, but it was all okay because I was on Demerol. And, it was basically like being drunk the entire time. So but because of that, there were some goofy events that happened. I had, they had to give, you can't really take a shower and cover up all these machine things that they have to have on you. So they just start giving you a sponge bath. So at one point, just in kind of my medical stupor, I decided it would be a good idea to just hang out naked. And then I just stopped wearing clothes altogether because, they were going to make me get naked and then put clothes back on. And why do that? And, we're all friends here. They're all nurses and they're all experts. So, just throw the blanket over me. A lot, I had some moments that I actually laugh about. I actually remember this one is that I had this preacher came from Rhema. Rhema Church is big in Tulsa, or Broken Arrow. So maybe know what I'm talking about, maybe not. But this preacher came from there to minister to me because, they have you do that a lot. And they ask if you're Catholic, and to see if you want to have a priest come in. They, ask you. And I've always and will ever be non-denominational Christian or just Christian because having a relationship with God that's your definition of Christianity. Not going to get political, just saying. And, but I had this, I vaguely remember my mom telling me, hey, there's this preacher coming in, so maybe you should get dressed. And I was just like, right on, preacher, awesome, he blesses babies, what has he not seen? I'm sorry, but once you have cancer, kind of, you shouldn't have to wear clothes, I guess. It was just my way of thinking. And I was just like, right on, and just went back to watching TV, just in the buff, just as God made me. And, but I was really nervous about, I can't believe I'm going to say this. I was really nervous about the preacher coming because he was going to make me talk. And I was totally convinced that my nose had got up and left. I didn't see it just get off my face, but so messed up on Demerol that I was just convinced. I remember thinking, man, I hope he doesn't ask me to talk because I'm going to sound really, really weird. I don't have a nose, like some doctor came in and was like, got your nose. And I was like, holy crap, you magic man. And, and just never gave it back, or something, and I remember the preacher coming in. I wouldn't get dressed, so my mom just kind of tucked me into the bed and I remember the preacher, I don't remember his face, but I remember him reaching out to shake my hand, and I reach my hand up to shake his, and I just remember my hand in my eyes just disappears. Just completely disappears. Like it's just a stump. So I look down. Oh, there's my alarm. We'll go a little bit further. But I look down and I see the stump, and so I just lower my hand. So this preacher comes in, I won't talk to him, and I won't shake his hand, and I'm completely naked. So I wonder if I'm having any kind of problems. I'm sure he prayed for me. I have still to this day have people come up and say that they visited me in the hospital that I don't remember, and I don't feel bad for it because look, I had more pressing matters, and I was drunk at the time. I do vaguely remember a few that came in. Oh man, this guy Tim, just a goofy kid, just from my little band of rejects, just one of the black sheep. Didn't have a car ride, and didn't have really any means of getting up there, and he took a public bus to 3 different places until he found St. Francis, and just to come to see me, and then had to figure out, and then I think my mom or dad gave him a ride home because he just went through all that trouble. I had friends that like I didn't know were my friends, really, and just acquaintances, come up and talk to me constantly. The one that stuck with me though is, like I said, when my parents were telling me I had cancer, when the news dropped and they were explaining it to me, it didn't hit me. So I'm really doubling back right now because I just realized there's a. I know we're right at an hour, but there's one thing I forgot to mention and it's kind of important. Um, when they told me, it didn't. The reality didn't set in. I just said, okay, yeah, right on, yeah, all right, let's do this. Now we know what we got, so let's. I couldn't process it. I didn't understand it. I didn't. It didn't get to me until that night. That night, my mom stayed there, and she would end up staying with me every step of the way. She never left my side. The only time she left my side is when she was so ragged that she could barely stand and had to get some sleep or had to go take a shower and wash up and all that. But she had a bed right next to me. And I fell asleep that night, and I woke up in the middle of the night. Just pitch black room. I woke up because of the IV beeping. And I don't know why. I don't know when I was. I just knew I had no clue where I was. I thought I had woken up in my bed at home and I wasn't hurting anymore. I thought that it was all just a bad dream. And then I realized I wasn't in my bed, that I had these cables hooked up to me. It's just all, I don't know how to explain it. It all deleted, like all of it. I didn't know where I was, what I was doing there, and I thought, no, that was all, that none of that happened. That didn't exist, I just had this horrible, horrible dream that lasted my whole last couple of years, and now it was over and it was time to get up and go to school, and get back to my little band of goth kids. But I was hooked up to this machine. I was in this room. The ground was cold. I had blankets on me that I did not recognize, and I had that motor of the IV going off. And I remember waking up and being so scared and started just talking and saying, where, oh my God, where am I? What is this? What's going on? And I hear my mom say my name, and she says, Cody. And I said, Mom, where are you? I can't see you. Where are we? Is everything okay? And I was just so, like, it all just hit me, man. Like, I was so scared and it dawned on me what was going on. What I was going to do, what I had to do. And she wakes up, calls the nurse, and then her and the nurse sit down and re-explain everything. And that it wasn't until then that it really dawned on me that it's a very real thing. That I was going to be one of those bald kids. I may not be on commercials, man, but I would come to find out that those kids, younger, obviously I was 16. I had kids younger than me, stronger than me, more intelligent than me, more courageous, was the strength of their whole family. Little girls that were just bald as bald could be, just little Xaviers walking around. But so strong and laughing, had the nerve to laugh and enjoy themselves at this place on a pediatric wing for oncology, and they were just sitting there laughing with mom or laughing with dad, bald as bald can be, sitting in a wheelchair, hanging on, walking out with their with their IV pole. Some of the little girls would have like little knickknacks on it and ribbons and stuff. I remember one kid had like a Superman flag at the top of his, and because it was his little flagpole. And they were my people. But I would come to find out that I had a really bad, had the heart problem, which led to a kidney problem and a liver problem. So I'm hooked up to all these machines, and it's all okay because I have a steady flow of Demerol coming in. But it's not until after the first month that we come to find out that I only have 2 allergies in my life. One is onions. That's the fun one. And 2 is Demerol. So I'm pumped full of a medicine that I am highly allergic to and had no idea. And that, my friends, is what we will talk about next time. That's right. I'm gonna leave you on the cliffhanger because I'll be honest, it's already been an hour and a half, and I'm kind of shocked that I got another hour of you guys. So thank you for sticking around. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Be sure to stay strong. Be sure to be there. Just show up. Tell your story. Because it's not for you, or it's not just for everyone else to hear. People are going to hear it, and some of them are just going to be like, wow, they've been through a lot. Some people are going to hear it and say, I needed that. And there's going to be one person that's going to hear your story and understand completely and understand you at a higher level, and that person is you. You're going to get it. That's the big theme of this episode, is you are going to understand yourself. And doing all this, telling your story, telling what you've been through, isn't just saying, woe is me. It's standing there firm and saying, you know what, after all that, I'm still here. I can't say I did it the most courageous way. I can't say that it has been easy. I can't say I went through it all because I wanted to. No one goes through this crap because they want to. Nobody deserves what they go through. And there's another quote for you. Look up at the sky and know that it is above everybody on this planet's head. Everybody on the face of this earth, be they good, be they bad, be they whatever culture, whatever kind of power they have, the sky is above everybody. Don't you ever expect anything in existence to be more fair than that. That is the only thing fair. Fair does not exist. We go through the things we go through so we can overcome them. The reason I have been told that that I am strong, that I went through cancer, is because I was the only one that could beat it. Because if someone else would have gone through it, maybe they couldn't. You went through drug abuse. Maybe you thought it was your own choice and it got out of hand. But really, it gave you the perfect opportunity to become strong and to become a light for somebody else. And to become a light for yourself. You have no idea how cleansing this is to tell you guys all this. To let this all out. Because I'm hearing myself say it for the first time. And it's meaning the world to me. And I've only been 2 episodes in. I don't care how many views I get. I don't care if this goes anywhere. But all I know is that I don't need 30 views. I don't need 500 views. I don't need 2 views. I need 1. And that 1 is the one that it touches. That's all I need. I need that one that it touches. So, that's my story so far of my battles and my wars. I hope my story helps you. Now go help someone with yours.